Welcome to Veterans State of Mind. I'm your host, Geraint Jones. I'm very happy to bring back a returning guest to you today. Before we get into him, I want to say a big thank you to Zulu Alpha Strap Company for sponsoring today's podcast. Zulu Alpha Straps, they make bombers watch straps for alley blokes. I know a lot of our American listeners will be scratching their heads right now saying, what is a bomber's watch strap and what is an alley bloke? Well, a bomber's watch strap means very nice watch strap, and an alley bloke means a distinguished gentleman. Zulu Alpha Straps, very thankful to them for being a sponsor from very early on in the podcast. You can find them at Zulu Alpha Straps. You can find them at zulualphastraps.com. Everything's linked up in the show notes. You'll just click through and go through on there. They make really beautiful straps for your timepieces. They've got all kinds of different designs. I've got a couple myself. Absolutely love them. And if you go to their social media, they've got great social media. You'll see their straps and timepieces on the wrists of frontline operators around the world. So thank you so much, Zulu Alpha Straps, for sponsoring today's podcast. I want to say thank you as well as ever to the Royal British Legion. Without them, there is no podcast. All I'll ask of you guys is that if you do enjoy the podcast, please say thank you to the Royal British Legion by going over to rbl.org.uk and having a look at what they offer veterans and their families. They're not trying to sell you anything. They're trying to do the exact opposite, and they are trying to give you services. All right. They sponsor this podcast, then they just want to help. They make a lot of stuff happen. They support veterans getting into business. They support veterans in hard times financially, because unfortunately there's a lot of people going through that at the moment. They support people with mental health. They support other charities. So please just go and have a look, guys, at rbl.org.uk. I'll say that again, rbl.org.uk. Please check them out, and also at Royal British Legion on social media. They put out some great social media too. They are the guys that make sure that we don't forget about those that went before us. And I think that is one of the best things that I can say about them, guys, because we all know about the Poppy Appeal. We all know about the services. We all know about Festival Remembrance. Without British Legion, it doesn't happen. So please check them out at rbl.org.uk. Okay, today's guest. Steven Pressfield is a best-selling historical novelist whose books include the classic Gates of Fire, Alexander, The Virtues of War, The Afghan Campaign, and Killing Rommel. Right, that's what it says about him on That's what it says about him on Amazon. I could say a lot more about him as well. Steven Pressfield's works have not only inspired me, like books like The Afghan Campaign, which is one of my favourite books, if not one of my probably favourite historical fiction book, not only inspired me to write myself, but then his books like The War of Art, Turning Pro, Do the Work, they have actually helped me to then make that a reality. I highly recommend them all. Steve's got a new book coming out soon. That's not why he came on the podcast, just came on for a chat, but I'm going to use this opportunity to plug his new book for him because I've managed to read an advanced copy of it. I highly recommend it. It's called A Man at Arms. I'll put a link down into it in the show notes. I don't want to give too much away about it, because at the end of the day, I always think that I'd prefer the author to talk about a book. Or quite honestly, sometimes if I know I trust an author, which I do with Steve, I don't actually want to know it. I don't want to see the back of the book or anything. I just want to get in there and read and have it all become a mystery to me. It unfolds as we go along. So without any more preamble from me, let's get to it. Please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Steven Pressfield. All right, Steve, welcome back to the podcast, mate. How are you doing?
Yes, it's great hanging out with you anytime.
So you started in advertising. That was kind of your intro into storytelling, I suppose.
Yeah, it was, definitely, yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about today, Steve, is something I've picked up on, you mentioned on your social media, was like that you've kind of got in, you're into your fitness, and I wanted to just kind of ask you, like, how important is exercise to you in your daily life? Because a lot of times people think writer, they don't necessarily put fitness in that same picture.
It is really important to me. Exercise is really important to me. In fact, this whole COVID thing has been a real challenge. But a few years ago, and I used to go to Gold's Gym. I still go to Gold's Gym here in Venice.
Oh, nice.
But I just went as just kind of a regular idiot, And a few years ago, I don't know if you remember, do you know the place at Gold's called Pro Camp?
No, I don't know.
Well, there's sort of an office on the side. It's run by a great trainer, wonderful guy named T.R. Goodman. And Pro Camp used to, it really specialized in professional hockey players. And it was kind of a year-round thing. And Mario Lemieux and, a lot of guys, Blake, the guy who's the forgot his first name. They call him Blakey. And anyway, a whole bunch of them used to train there. And one day, TR came up to me at the gym. He actually had seen me on Oprah. And he kind of invited me to train with him, and which I never would have done. I was like totally intimidated by these guys because I would see them working out in that back space that they called the circuit, which was just this incredible, forget about it type of thing, you know. So anyway, TR invited me to train with him, and I started doing that. And I would get up, you know, it's changed since the COVID thing, but I used to get up at 3:15 in the morning, you know, and be there by 4 o'clock and do the, you know, get in an hour, 2 hours. I really swear by it because as a writer, like you were just saying, people think of a writer as that they don't do any exercise, right? They're just, you know, smoking cigarettes and drinking brandy. But for me, going to the gym early is a way of getting my day started in a really positive way because I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to work that hard. I'm afraid of the stuff, of whatever weight I might be having to struggle with. And it's resistance. They call it resistance training, right? And so I always feel like TR says, I'm sure people have said this to you or you've said it, is when you exercise early, you can say to yourself, nothing else in my day is going to be as hard as what I just did this last hour. So definitely, I'm a real believer in that psychologically as much as physically.
Yeah, that getting up at 3:15 in itself that in itself is a hard discipline. I mean that you've taken the Jocko thing and gone a whole and beaten him by a whole hour. You must hit the coast as well at a beautiful time driving home after that. That's
part of the reason why I got up so early is because that drive, it becomes impossible if you 5:30 or any later. You got to get in there really soon.
It's really interesting though because, like you said, the stereotypical writer is smoke cigarettes or does coke, drinks, all that kind of stuff, and I think it's very important to highlight this that that doesn't need to be the artist's way. Have you seen a shift in the way that people kind of look at artists and the way that artists say build lifestyle, during your career?
I have, and I do think that it wasn't particularly cool to be an artist of any kind. I think, you were sort of a freak or something like that, sort of like an Andy Warhol crazy, and I think now sort of with podcasting and people being on Instagram and being out there, there's a lot of, in a good way, there are a lot of people encouraging fitness and encouraging people to express themselves and do their art, whatever it may be. Maybe it's designing and building motorcycles, or maybe it's some other thing that doesn't fit into like music, literature, et cetera, et cetera. And so I do think a lot of people are starting to think of themselves as artists of one kind or another. Whether like that mug that I sent to you, there's a guy, Joel Cherico, that's a potter, and he absolutely thinks of himself as an artist, and he is an artist and an entrepreneur as well, and also a kind of a presence on social media as well. That's the thing that sort of happened over the last 10 years, I think, that's changed things a bit.
I think as well it's people being able to see that you don't necessarily need to do something full time in order for you to take great enjoyment out of it. You're still, if you write a couple of 100 words a week, you're an artist. It doesn't need to be providing your income. Was that something you'd agree or disagree with?
I would definitely agree with that. And, the other, the whole concept, yes, of a long tail business or the long tail, it's kind of like what came in when Amazon and Google came in. And it's like that bell curve that goes like this, with the big stuff in the middle and then these tails going out to the side. And the concept is that it used to be, let's say 20 or 30 years ago, let's say you're a musician or you're writing a book or something like that, there would only be a very few books or albums that would be bought. They would be in this big top part of the bell curve, like an album by Bob Dylan or Neil Young or something like that. But if you and me were to put out an album, we had a garage band or something like that, nobody would ever hear of it at all. But now with Amazon and things like that and Audible, where there's kind of an infinite bookshelf, there isn't just room for the top 10. There's room for everybody. Out in those tails, a lot of us can survive. It's not only do you not have to do it full time like the old days, but if you sell a couple of thousand books a year or a couple of thousand albums a year, you can actually survive doing that. So you can people can find you via Google, and they can buy your stuff via Audible or Amazon or whatever. So that's been a whole change why there, I think, are a lot more people that are living the artist's life one way or another. Maybe they're working at a day job also, but that they can do their art, whatever it is, or pursue it and actually make a little money.
I think society benefits from that as well, isn't it? Because instead of having a few gatekeepers at a few publishing places, anyone can put their ideas out. And I mean, I've self-published works, and I was very reticent to do it at first because I thought there's a bit of a stigma about it. It was kind of like those who can't get published. But now it's like, look, the publishing is driven by the marketing department, sales department. A lot of the time, if they don't want to necessarily take a risk on something new, it might be an idea to self-publish it. You've got your own publishing. What would you call it? A publishing label? Is that the right term? Or
I don't know.
But you have Black Irish. Was that something you did to give you more independence in what you were doing?
My original editor that bought Gates of Fire, that bought the book of Gates of Fire, is a guy named Sean Coyne, and he was working then in the mainstream publishing, but he became very frustrated with that. So he started his own little publishing company, and we published together the War of Art. That book, let's see, the short version of it is we got the rights back at one point. We sold the paperback rights to Grand Central, and thank goodness it was only a 10-year window, and it ended. And so when that came back, they made us an offer. They said, for another 10 years, we'll give you $200,000 right now. And we got together and we sat down for a cup of coffee, and Sean said, screw this, let's start our own little company. So in that way, of course, instead of getting, 75 cents for a book, you get, maybe $3.50, and whatever that is in pounds and quid. But in any event, so we started this little company, and it worked. So that you could kind of say that for me, I have a foot in both worlds. My novels get published by mainstream publishers, but my books about writing, like The War of Art, I publish myself with Sean. And it's definitely been a good thing. I mean, it's really kind of, my hat's off to Sean.
But I suppose as well, it gives you greater flexibility as well, that you can do, you haven't got someone saying, oh, well, every other book in this genre is blah, blah, 1,000. Because I got to tell you, Steve, I love the self-development phase. And one of the reasons I love your book so much is because it says what needs to be said, and it's not 100,000 words of padding. Like, there's a lot of great books out there. They're 80,000 words, and they could be one chapter, and you get the same message.
Yes, I agree. And here's the flip side of that, which is a little odd. Like my books, The War of Art, and the follow-ups to those, we've never been able to get a regular publisher to buy them, any of them. In fact, we were doing a new one that's sort of a calendar type of book, like a yearly book, day 1, day 2, day 3. And we took it to, mainstream publishers, and they rejected it. So I can't even sell it to them. So it's a good thing we do have, Sean and I do have this sidebar company.
That's nuts. And also, I want people listening trying to get published to take solace in the fact that Stephen Pressfield gets books rejected from publishers. I mean, that's just nuts. That's nuts. But
I get rejected all the time. Like the most rarest thing in the world that where anybody will actually say yes.
It's mind blowing, isn't it? And then I think you look at a publisher and they're involved with books and things, and so you think of it as this big creative enterprise, but it's a business. And, if they've got a certain amount of money for commissioning books, and they've got Michelle Obama's book. I have a thing against Michelle Obama because she knocked me out. I was on the edge of the top 10 and she wasn't going anywhere. So I have a vendetta against Michelle Obama.
What business does she have writing a book instead of you? I mean, she's just a name, If I'm an editor, I just say, well, we'll put that name on the cover. Nothing against Michelle Obama. She's great. She has no business knocking you off the top 10.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. It's a business at the end of the day, and they'll take a celebrity. Someone else will write their book, and then they'll sit in the top 10 for a long time, and that's why I think self-publishing is so great now, because I got to be honest with you, Steve, I don't even look at the top 10 because I know the books I'm probably going to enjoy probably aren't necessarily going to be in there. I have no interest in reading something that's been written by somebody else who, Michelle, I'm going to pick on Michelle Obama now. If I ever meet her, I'll apologize to her. But, I have no interest in reading a book that's been written by someone that wasn't even there, that's
yeah,
regurgitating it. But no, I think it is great, and it's the same with music. We've had people on the podcast who have made their own music, backed themselves with that, who have had success doing it that way, and it comes down to really this ability to, like you said, with the long tail. If you add enough pieces to that long tail, it might take you 20 years. But if you start building that long tail now, in 20 years, you might be able to go pro in whatever you're doing.
Yes, that's the theory anyway, and I think it works.
While we're on the subject of places around Malibu, I was thinking you live just up the road from the Getty Villa.
Yes.
And which has an incredible collection of artifacts, historical artifacts, antiquities. Is that somewhere you go quite often? And if so, is that somewhere you go? Do you draw like inspiration from seeing ancient kind of artifacts? You've never been?
No, you would think I would, but actually it's been closed for a long time.
Oh, really?
Because of the virus. But
oh.
But I don't know why, but no, I don't get any inspiration for going. What inspiration I would get from the ancient world would come from books,
right,
rather than, walking around the villa, although it's an amazing place.
I went there once, but it was just to impress a girl. I can't really remember anything about.
Did it work?
I can't remember. There was a lot of trying to impress women back then. I'd be lying if I said I remembered. All of them, but it was a great time. Fond memories of Malibu. What are some of those books then, Steve? If you had to narrow it down to a couple of books that really give you inspiration and really give you, enjoyment from them at the same time, what would those books be?
The first one I would say is probably the most difficult of all to read. Like if anybody is thinking of picking this up, you got to really have a strong stomach and be ready for it. It's Thucydides' History of the Peloponnesian War, which I've got on my shelf over here somewhere. Have you read that, Gez?
I'm gonna be honest. I have picked my way through it. It's something I've sat down with. I've tried to, but I dip. It's something I dip in and out of. Yeah, I've had it. My mum actually had my mum must have read it. I think I get some of this stuff from my mum because we have a really old copy of it in the house, not from the Peloponnesian Wars, but it's pretty old. I'll be honest with you. There's only so many pages I can take a time of something like that.
But it's great. I mean, almost any of the stuff that has still survived from that era. Obviously, the Iliad, all time great. The Odyssey, greatest ever. Anything by Plato, any of his Socratic dialogues are great. Particularly the ones around the death of Socrates when he has to take the hemlock. Those are great things. I love Xenophon. I know this is really erudite. Everybody's falling asleep in the audience right.
Well, Xenophon, I have read that one. That one I found a lot easier to read for some reason.
Persian expedition one, or I'm thinking.
Yeah, the March of the 10. The Anabasis, is it? Alison?
Yeah, but there's another one called The Education of Cyrus. I don't know if you've read that, but
no, I haven't.
It purports to be how Cyrus the Great of Persia was raised and his world. But in fact, as you know, Xenophon although he was an Athenian, he was a great friend of Sparta. And he used to live there and spend a lot of his time there. And so this book, The Education of Cyrus, is really about Spartan upbringing and really about how they trained the boys and that kind of stuff. So, and then it goes on to a whole sort of all kinds of stuff about military leadership and stuff like that. But it's really good.
While we're on that, then I think the kind of the Hollywood interpretation of the Greek relationship with the Persian relationship is that they were two separate sides that hated each other. It doesn't seem to be as clear as that, though, does it? From what you were just saying about, they go and stay in each other's camps. I know there's mercenaries that fought either side. So can you tell us a bit more about what that kind of relationship was like between the Greek states and the Persians?
Well, it was, as near as I can tell, certainly they were enemies. But as you know, like in the Peloponnesian War, the Persians had the money. They had the gold and they had the navy, other than the Athenian navy. So the Spartans allied themselves with the Persians. And a lot of kind of opportunists among the Greeks would suck up to various, Persian satraps and stuff like that who had the money. And so they did get to know each other quite well. And I think they really did respect each other. And when Alexander conquered the Persian Empire, he, as you know, would integrate, after he had defeated them, he would integrate their elite units and the sons of the nobles and stuff like that into his army, to the point that he began alienating his own Macedonians who thought, and he would start dressing like a Persian and that kind of thing. And it became kind of a real issue, whereas the guy said, we can't even get in the tent anymore because these fancy guys in their pajamas are hanging out.
Was it in your book Virtues of War? Is it Memnon who's the mercenary general?
Yeah.
Now because I remember what
he was a Greek mercenary who sold himself to the Persians. Memnon.
When I came across him in your book, I thought this guy sounds fascinating. Is he someone you've written about more, or is it someone that you've when you come across these guys, like, you could just branch off on an entire book series about these generals themselves are all worthy, aren't they?
Must be that way for you too, guys, particularly like in the Roman era that you're involved in, where you come on a character and you go, wow, there's an entire book or everything about this guy.
It's 100% the temptation, to be honest. Like, one of the reasons I'm doing shorter books now is to give me that opportunity to be able to go after, because I kind of think, I'd like to know his dad's story, or I'd like to know his son's story. I'm just giving away a few things that are going to be coming over. I think one of the things about these kind of Greek generals is you've done such a good job of, you've done a great job of covering them, and a lot of these big, in the Roman world, a lot of the big names have been covered, and I don't think, maybe one day I'll think I can, but right now I'm like, I don't think I can really add anything to the discussion on those people at this point. So I'm kind of keeping it more to the fiction, fictional characters in the rank and file that I'm doing. But before we come on, I want to talk about your Warrior Archetype series in a bit. But I was just thinking, before we go on, you talk about the importance of your physical routine first thing in the morning. Do you have any other kind of set routines that you have in the day when it comes to, to writing, or other things that are kind of sacrosanct for you for having a good day?
I come home from the gym and I have breakfast, or I used to, in the pre-COVID days, I used to have breakfast out with a bunch of other old guys, a bunch of old geezers. We'd have breakfast. You've seen them in various pubs and bistros. But then I would come home and do my correspondence, get rid of that. And then, maybe around 10:30 or 11, I would start. I do start, and I work in a solid block. I turn everything off, email and all that kind of stuff. And I try to get in 3 or 4 hours. That's about it. And then I'm too exhausted. And that's pretty much my schedule. And at that point, I always stop when I start making mistakes, when I start making typos and I know I'm getting tired. Funny, I'll start making one typo and then I'll make 10 more, and I'll go, okay, that's it. And then I stop, and I definitely have a belief that the office is closed at that point. I just turn my head off. I don't obsess about anything. I don't try to, think, did chapter 2 work, or anything like that. And I just sort of, I don't read that much. I'm more of a movie guy. Watch a movie or two at night or something like that. And I get to bed pretty early. Certainly in the days 3:15, I'd go to bed when I visit my nephew, and he has 2 little kids, 3 years old and 5 years old. I was in bed before they were. So that's sort of my routine. But while we're talking, let me ask you a question. What we were talking about. How do you do your research? What's your method?
So my method is, I did a lot of research about what the periods I wanted to do initially before I came up with the idea of the series. And then I already know where the next few books are going in terms of what battles are going to underpin each book. So I already know the broad context. And then what I'll do is I'll come in, I'll refresh myself, because there's usually a while in between each book, which I'm not, this time I'm actually doing the books back to back. What I did the other day, so I'll say what I did for this latest one, Traitor, is I get a few. The thing is, Steve, as well, for one of the period that I'm covering, there's only two sources, and only one of them was actually there. It's the Velis Patercules. I'm terrible at Latin pronunciation. The cavalry guy, he was kind of there. And in typical Roman fashion, he's in this war of 3 years, which is a massive bloody affair, and he sums it up in a couple of paragraphs. It's like, oh, cheers, mate. Right. You couldn't help me out a bit more. Yeah. And then there's the Tacitus, and his is written, after the fact, and probably is a sycophantic kind of work, as a lot of them are. So there's not really that many sources about it, to be honest. And so I have a few go-to books by people like Adrian Goldsworthy, who are, Roman kind of, he's an author as well as a scholar, I guess. And I look at their books, and then, to be honest, I look at what their interpretations are, and then I overlay it with what my interpretation as a soldier is, because a lot of the times I think that doesn't make sense to me. Uh-huh. I used to take everything as gospel when I was researching, and now I think this is just somebody's best guess a lot of the time. So I'm going to put my best guess on top of that. And what I did this time, which worked really well, because I was losing track of, because they're all over the Balkans, this campaign. I made a PowerPoint presentation, 50 slides about where each army goes, right? Where this army going, now there's an army going here, there's a battle at this town, right? What's this? Because the names are always changing on the towns and the rivers from source to source. And then there's some places which they don't know where the battlefields were, or they don't know exactly which town it was. And then from doing this presentation, I could look and go, well, if that was the last battle and then this was the next battle, it makes sense that the next one was probably one of these ones in the middle. And I kind of just narrow things down like that. And then a lot of it is just, I look at the area and I think, well, how would a battle have gone down in this area? What would the warfare have been like? If it's in these mountainous regions of Bosnia, they're probably not drawn up in 5 legions together. It's probably like in your book, The Afghan Campaign. They're probably working in small flying columns with mounted troops. And I'll be honest, my thing is, and this is allows me to make the books a lot shorter, is I don't really care about how the chainmail's made. I don't care about, how he's cooking their dinner or what they're using to spice it with. Some people do. It's just not my thing. I'm interested in how the soldiers talk to each other, and the being on campaign. So I think the way I've done it for Traitor, I feel like I'm getting the process. It's obviously still learning a lot, but I feel like I'm getting the process down now.
That's very interesting. So a lot of what you're doing is really fiction. You're just making it up. You're kind of projecting yourself as a soldier into that world and saying, what would really have happened if it was there?
I think so. Unfortunately, we have really got no passages from the grunt, that was there. And even so, the Bellum Batoa, which was this 3-year war there. There's hardly any. There's hardly. We're talking hundreds of thousands of troops, multiple battles, multiple sieges, and there's 20 lines about it. So I mean, it has to be a lot of fiction.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same for me. As you know, like of the Spartans, they were notoriously secretive, and there's really practically nothing, And actually, I might have told you this before. My friend who lives here in Malibu, Randy Wallace, who wrote Braveheart. I asked him about, his concept of research. And his concept is that what counts is the story. He says, get the story first, What's it about? Who are the characters? What's the beginning? What's the middle? What's the end? Then go back and do the research and kind of fill in a little bit. And again, it's the same thing for him, even though that's much closer to our time than what you and I are doing. There's just not much there, And he said a lot of stuff like about Alexander, for instance, was written 300 years after his death, so the guys weren't there. And like you say, a lot of it is sycophantic. It's somebody sucking up to some rich prince and writing a book lionizing one of his ancestors So it's a bunch of bullshit, you know? And I find a lot of what I do, and I'm sure it's the same with you, is I'm reading between the line. What would really happen in a case like this, you know? And a lot of times I say, I don't buy this, you know, what the historian is saying. That wouldn't happen that way. So you and I, we pretend to be historians, but actually a lot of it we're making up as we go along.
Well, I remember, Steve, watching the historical documentaries as a kid, and I watch them now, and they're talking that they've got a completely different idea. But the ones 20 years ago were adamant about what they believed, and the ones 20 years later are adamant what they believe. We don't know is the bottom line of so much of this stuff.
Yeah. And the other thing, not to get too deep in the weeds of this subject, when a historian of the ancient world is describing a battle, let's say, you know, two phalanxes coming together, they thought they themselves had fought in battles or had seen many of them, and all of their readers had too, right? So they like, we don't need to describe anything because everybody, it's like if you and I were talking about, let's say in a sentence we might say, we went down to the grocery store, we got some milk. And what we've left out, let's say somebody's reading that 3,000 years from now, what we've left out is what a car is.
Right. Yeah.
Is there, and if they're 3,000 years from now trying to figure this out, they go, there was a steering wheel, there was a gear shift, you know, there was a road. It's like, you know, so you and I, when we're kind of reconstructing these battles and stuff, a lot of what we have to do is, well, what would really happen? What if you're there under the helmet, you know, or behind a shield? What's happening?
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. It really is. I hadn't even thought about the fact that most of the readers the readers themselves would have been involved in that bit, and that's because was it like in ancient Greece, was it pretty much if you were a able-bodied man, you were required to serve?
Pretty much, if you had enough money to afford armor.
Right.
You know, which if you think about metal in those days, you couldn't just go down to the metal shop and get it, you know. It had to be, how did they make iron? How did they make bronze? It was a big deal. So pretty much, I think it was like property owners, if you had a little farm, enough to generate, you know, a suit of armor and a shield, and then you would be called upon like a reservist today, you know, to grab your kit and get down there and fight.
Have you ever tried on all the kit and everything and held the...
Never have, no.
No, neither have I. And I don't... And again, this is one, because I know like a lot of people do. And again, if that's what works for somebody, because everyone's process is going to be different. You know, you and I, you know, anybody that's served in the military at any point knows what it's like to be uncomfortable. And to me, body armor is body armor. It doesn't matter if it's a modern body armor or chainmail. Weight on your shoulder is weight on your shoulder, and discomfort is discomfort.
Yes. And the one thing I'm sure is it was much heavier than we think it was.
Oh, yeah.
Cumbersome, and you couldn't see a goddamn thing of, you know, those helmets.
I always think, like, one thing that's very hard to you know, because people can imagine wearing armor, people can imagine this. Sweat in your eyes and not being able to wipe it is so, because I always think there would have been some people who were more like their battle lines are closing, and the only thing that they're concerned with is the bit of dirt they've got in their eye.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk about Warriors then, Steve. I've been really enjoying the Warrior Archetype series. I think it's been great. First things first, actually, because it's this series, and I'll put links to it in the episode's notes so that anyone can find it. How are you enjoying social media? Because you've been on Instagram for a bit now, and you've got this Warrior Archetype series. I think you're up to 40-something videos at the moment. How are you enjoying like the social media experience?
I like it. You know, it's certainly nice to get feedback. You know, that you put a video out and immediately you get some kind of feedback. Quite different from a book, right? A book comes out, you never hear anything. You know, so I do like that, and it's fun. It's fun to do. I mean, the hardest thing for me was sort of getting over the idea in my head of nobody wants to hear what I have to say. You know, it's like I say to myself, why would I put this out? Does anybody actually give a damn? You know, and it's interesting when people do respond. So yeah, I mean, you're kind of a maven of that world. How do you like it?
I've got to be honest here. I'm not. I have a love-hate relationship with it, because I know, especially this last year in lockdown, I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say I'm still haven't got a good. I'm a lot better with my temper than I used to be, but it does flare up a bit easily, and usually it's social media that flares me up. I overreact to things on there. I think it's great. At the end of the day, if it wasn't for social media, probably wouldn't be having this conversation with you now. Someone that we were together with, you were with recently, Rudy Reyes.
Yeah.
You know, Rudy's a friend of mine that I met through social media before we connected together. Talk about a warrior archetype, that guy. But, you know, social media has had a lot of good for me, but I do think when I kind of try and look at my behavior and think, right, where could I get better in how I behave? And a lot of the time it's down to what makes me flash, as the Marines would say, Royal Marines would say, is that social media does have that negative effect on me. I don't, from a point of view, because we're in lockdown right now in the UK, like another full lockdown. On one hand, it's great for people because there's some hilarious stuff on there. And there's some great people on there. There's some great advice on there. On the other hand, if you go down that negativity route, it's poison. So...
Actually, let me correct what I just said. I sort of misunderstood your question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm definitely a guy that reads that stuff. You know, I don't go on in that, you know, I'm just talking about putting out the videos that I put out and hearing the response that comes back to that. But I agree with you. That's just a rabbit hole. And, you know, we were talking before about the long tail business, right? The problem with in social media is you got those long tails and you get into conspiracy theories and into crazy people, you know, and that's a real negative that didn't exist before. The gatekeepers actually were a good thing politically because they kept these crazy people from finding a platform. But now those days are over, and we're reaping the whirlwind now.
I'm partial to a good conspiracy theory because I love indulging the imagination. I don't believe every conspiracy theory, but I enjoy listening to them. Like, they're great stories a lot of the time. Like, the artist in me is like, I appreciate the story that somebody's made out of they've had these two completely unconnected dots and somehow they managed to connect them together. I'm like, you know, I appreciate that. But it is a tool. I do think that we're lucky that we didn't grow up with it, because that allows some kind of, like, you can look at it externally a bit more and see. I think obviously we don't know exactly what, because we haven't quite got to that point yet, but it will be interesting to see what people are like that who have had it since childhood.
I don't have a clue what that's going to mean, but I can't believe it's going to be anything good.
No, I can't either. We had a guy on, we recorded my friend Zach recently, you know, we were talking about, you know, the problems of, like, porn addiction in young men and like, you know, social media I'm addicted to social media. There's not a day I don't check my social media account. And the other thing as well is, if you use social media a lot, the day you do decide to not open your phone, the next day everyone's texting you thinking you've killed yourself because you've had a day off on there. You know, it's endemic now, but it can be a force for good. And I do think your videos have been a part of that. I've been really enjoying them. Do you enjoy, because obviously, you know, you are a creator. Do you enjoy that aspect of creating in a different art form than what you have done before?
Yeah, I do. It's a little bit like blogging, I suppose, or podcasting, which I don't do that. But, you know, you discover what you think about something. You didn't really know, right, until you actually have to say something, you know. This whole Warrior Archetype series, I sort of started it, and I didn't know where it was going to go. And it's been interesting to find took it, you know. It's a kind of a self-discovery type of thing for me. Did
you make them all or do you do, you know, as you're going along, you're making the next one, you know, as you go along based on the one that came before it?
Actually, in the writing, yes. I mean, I wrote them all at the start. You know, I wrote scripts. So I didn't know at first where they were going to go. But by the time I had written all the scripts, which I don't follow when I actually do the video, I just sort of keep the general idea in mind and then just talk off the cuff. But yeah, I didn't really know where it went at the start. But once I had written the scripts, then obviously I did know. Then it was like a book, you know, it had a beginning, middle, and an end.
Where did you get you've got a very good manner of presenting on the videos. Is that something self-taught? Is that something you had from work, or where did that come from?
Well, thanks for saying that, Kez.
Yeah, no, I think you really do.
Diana sets up a couple of little iPhone cameras, and I just get up and talk. So
Uh,
that's about it. Yeah,
you got the natural gift.
I guess.
You want to get yourself on one of the acting agencies in
Yeah, right.
down the road. Have you ever done it? Have you ever done any acting in it? Never something that tickled your fancy?
No. How about you? Have you ever done any of that?
I gotta be honest, mate. I'm not interested in being on that side of the camera.
I'm like you. I don't want to be there either. Yeah, you'd be good. I could see you.
I just can't think of anything more boring than standing around on set all day, to be quite honest. I didn't realise how much work went into acting until I went to my friend's filming. I was a staff writer with him on there, but we'd written everything ahead of time, so there was no work to do.
Uh-huh.
And I went down to set, and I thought, oh God, I've heard the same thing. They're doing 10 takes of the same thing from different angles, and I was like, this is bloody boring. It's one of those things, Steve, to be honest, is there's only so many hours in the day. And it's not that it wouldn't be fun. You got to prioritize and say what makes me happiest, and
Yeah.
and what am I best at? How long have you been writing professionally? For because like we said, you got the typewriter in the back of you. You worked in advertising for a bit, and you've done. I know you've had a myriad of other jobs when you were first kind of getting into it. But how long is it now since you've been, kind of full time, as a writer?
I think it's from like maybe the early 80s, 83, something like that. So it's a long time. So it's closing in on 40 years or so. Yeah.
The reason I ask is because is there still something because this is one of the things I hear from artists and stuff a lot is this, and it's almost the same, you hear it from people that have made money and they are terrified about going back, even though like they'd have to be like catastrophic to go back from money to no money. Is there still a part of you that's like, that's worried that this career is going to get taken away from you?
Yeah, definitely. Now, first of all, I don't have that much money. But yeah, I think it's only natural to fear that. I mean, I certainly do. Maybe it's just my upbringing. My mom and dad came out of the Depression, so they always had that. That's in my DNA. The idea that the bottom can drop out at any moment and you can just be in free fall. So yeah, I definitely, that's in the back of my mind, but I'm like you, I'm working, 20 hours a day. So I figure I can just kind of keep skating across the ice as it cracks.
What do you think of that saying? I'm going to butcher it now, but it's basically, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
I think that's true, I mean, that doesn't mean it isn't hard, and it doesn't mean that you don't have a lot of bad moments. But I don't really consider it working, when writing. I mean, it's a creative challenge. It's when you say do what you love. They say that phrase, and it's like, oh, I'm so happy. It's wonderful, but you're not. I mean, you're not happy. You're like it's being in a coal mine. You're digging a ditch. You're digging a foxhole. But that's what you want to do. You want to be digging that foxhole.
Yeah, I think what I would say to people is like, you work bloody hard, but you'll be glad that you're doing it. I think is
just being an entrepreneur, right? You open your own little bar, you open your own pub, your business. You're working 20 hours a day, but you love it.
And you gave me some great advice. So I told you I finished the last book, and you were like, "Great, now start the next one." And that's how the attitude needs to be, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I take my hat off to you guys. You're constantly working. You got project after project. You got it in films. You got it in all kinds of stuff. So, I salute you. You're going nowhere but up, and you're going to have a great time doing it.
I appreciate that, Steve. I want to be living out there. I'm seeing you in Gold's Gym, so I've got no other choice. I got no other choice. But I absolutely love it. I had a great experience recently where I sat down to start writing the new book, and this is the first time this has happened to me. I think it's just because I've kind of got in the past some bullshit and kind of just sat there and I thought, wow, this is my job. This is pretty awesome.
It can be so hard, and I feel like you get to the end of your life and you look back and say, I should have enjoyed it a little. I should have realized I had fallen into some, into clover here. I'm doing what I want to do. How many people get to do that? In another era, you and I would have been slaves, dragging blocks of granite across the desert.
God. But, I mean, on the plus side, with our great suntans, I do miss the sun. But that's kind of something that I think the writing the historical stuff is great for, isn't it? It's giving you a sense of perspective about about your own life.
The one I really wish I did know about the ancient world and ancient was how physically tough were these guys really? And I imagine that they were, compared to our guys today. I mean, a Roman legionary, or somebody in Alexander's phalanx or any of those guys. My guess is that they were much tougher than we are today, even than Rudy today. That maybe I'm wrong, but I just imagine that they could hump longer distances, carrying heavier loads, and endure more crap than we can by a mile. I may be wrong. That's my instinct. What do you think?
I think that people will rise to the challenge of what you give them. Because, we only got to look 100 years ago and to look at what men went through in the trenches, which to me, trench warfare in the First World War is the hardest kind of war that's ever existed. Like, I don't, living in trenches made up of bodies of people that have been decomposing. And then at the end of that, you get up and run into a machine gun.
Yeah.
And they rose to the occasion. Obviously, upbringing and stuff makes a difference to it. And I do think that as, the military is kind of like harder than civil society. But as civil society gets softer, so does the military. But I think there's physical limits and mental limits to what a person can do. And so you people that become recon Marines or SAS or whatever, like, I don't know if there's actually a level past that what a human is really capable of. I think we have our limits. I think across as a cross society, though, I think that's definitely true. I mean, we. I've do it myself plenty of times. I'll moan about, you're moaning about the weather or something, and you're thinking like, God, I live in a house, I've got heat, heating and everything like that. So I'm not really sure about it, to be honest. It's something I'd love to know, and this is why I wish there were these, these first-hand accounts of things. Have you ever come across there's a first-hand account by a French soldier he was like a in enlisted rank, and he was part of Napoleon's march on Moscow, and then the retreat back. I don't know if you ever come across it. I'll make a note to let you know what it is, but that's fascinating because those guys, what they're going through. But then again, look at what soldiers went through in the Second World War. So I don't know. I don't know is the answer, Steve. Really, to be honest,
we won't know. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping we do find out. I'm hoping after this life we go back into the soup and we'll get all the answers to this one. I want to come on to your new book a bit because while we're talking about warrior archetypes, I know you touched on this in your videos, but can you just first of all just refresh us to what the warrior archetype is, and then tell us more about Talamon, your character of your new book?
Well, the whole concept of archetypes. And forgive me if I'm saying stuff that you already know, but just let's go back to the basics here.
Basics, yeah.
The comes from Carl Jung, the great psychologist, and he believed from myths and from legends and from his own experience with his people under therapy that the human unconscious contains, among other things, the collective unconscious and all that sort of thing, but it also contains these things that he calls archetypes. And if you and these are sort of ready-made kind of super personalities. Like one archetype is the warrior, another archetype is the sage or the mystic, the virgin, the trickster, the healer, the artificer. Did you ever watch Game of Thrones?
Oh yeah.
You know how they have the seven, the gods, and they'll in their sort of rituals they'll say, "May the mother bless you with mercy, may the father guide you with wisdom, may the warrior give you courage," and et cetera, et cetera. And those are archetypes, right?
Oh, okay.
And a lot of times characters in movies are archetypes. They sort of work like the samurai or the Clint Eastwood, the man with no name. Those are, they're archetypal characters. Obi-Wan Kenobi is the archetype of the sage, or Gandalf, or Merlin, or something like that. And one of the archetypes is the warrior. And that archetype kind of kicks in for men anyway, maybe around age 12, 13, 14, and kind of carries through to maybe the end of your 20s. And it sort of takes over you. And it's like when you're in the grip of the warrior archetype, you want to hang out with your buddies. You want to jump out of airplanes, pick things up. You want to you want to risk things, you want to drive fast, et cetera, et cetera. Like you and I, the books that we write a lot of them are about warriors a lot of times. We're kind of we're kind of investigating this archetype, the warrior archetype. The Spartans, the Romans, they were right, that was their main thing. But the interesting thing to me, and in the series, the video series, I get into this quite a bit, is that there are archetypes beyond the warrior archetype. One of the concepts that the series says is that we mature from archetype to archetype. It's sort of like one kicks in and then it sort of wears itself out. And then another one kicks in. Like if you think about guys like you, veteran state of mind, guys that have come back from Iraq and Afghanistan, in that incarnation, you were full on in the warrior archetype. Then you come back and you get married, you have a kid, and you have to reintegrate into civilian life. And suddenly that warrior archetype, the skills that you had, don't quite translate anymore. And what's happening is you're moving on to the next archetype, the mentor, the teacher, the father, and then beyond that are things like the king archetype, by which I mean someone who is a leader and who has people who look up to him or her. The queen archetype is the same. And the whole thing of like when the king rules with wisdom and justice, the kingdom prospers. But when the king rules with folly and with injustice, the kingdom fails, So what I'm interested kind of is what archetypes are beyond the warrior archetype? What do you move on to after that? How do you evolve out of that? And so that's sort of what this whole series, the warrior archetype, is about. Because if you look at like what just happened in the U.S. in the Capitol, this crazed mob that attacked the Capitol. These are like guys stuck in the warrior archetype in the worst possible sense. Where the only action that they can come up with is violence. And where their only attitude is an us versus them. A demonizing of the other, attack the other, kill the other, Whereas when you move on to the higher archetypes, to the teacher, the mentor, the king, the sage, am I being too long-winded here?
No, it's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Your attitude, your world broadens, and you go from being in a strictly sort of ego, us versus them concept to something that's much more inclusive. And you start to say to yourself, these enemies that we were fighting in Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever, they're human beings too. They have families, they love their children, they have wives, they have a religion that may be different from ours, but they striving for the same kind of thing. And you begin, your outlook kind of broadens a little bit, and you begin to be willing to include others into that. And at the farthest reaches of that, you start to include things like the environment, the ocean, the atmosphere, the land, and then you start to include future generations. Am I leaving something for them that's, am I going to leave the world in a better place? And when you finally get to, the kind of the sage archetype or the higher archetypes, you're very close to, a divine sort of point of view of love and of inclusion. So that's kind of what the last episode. So this character of mine, Telamon of Arcadia, who's in my new book called The Man at Arms, if you forgive me for plugging this a little bit.
No, go for it. We'll link everything in the notes as well for people.
He's a guy in my stories. He was in three other books of mine, actually. He was in The Virtues of War, he was in Tides of War, he was in The Profession. And he's kind of like Clint Eastwood, the man with no name. He's one of those kind of guys that is like a one-man killing machine, or like some of the samurai movies that you have, some of those guys, who is the consummate warrior in the sense that he can handle weaponry, he can handle adversity. He's carried it as far as it can go, but he's frustrated at that point, and he's up against that issue of what comes next. How can I get beyond this thing? And he has fought over the years for different commanders. He's had good commanders. He had bad commanders. He doesn't believe in commanders anymore. There are flags that he believed in, flags he didn't give a shit about, And he's had victory, and he's seen how empty that is, and he's had defeat, and he's seen that maybe that's not quite so empty. Maybe there's some wisdom in there. And so this new book, I wanted to write something that was about him alone and follow his journey beyond that. So that's what this new book, A Man at Arms, is all about. And also, this character of Telamon is sort of an alter ego for me. He's the character of all my characters that I really like the most.
That's one of the questions I was going to ask you. Is it like how much is there of Stephen Pressfield in Telamon, and be that both your experiences, aspirations, all that kind of thing.
Although he's an alter ego for me, I'm not like him at all, and he's not like me. Kick my ass up and down the street, no problem. But he is my sort of fictional alter ego, my kind of avatar, or something that I could never do the things that he does, but I can imagine myself into that. And the issues that he's dealing with on a physical level are things that I'm kind of dealing with, he's on a spiritual level as well, but that are part of my inner war is his outer war.
You mentioned the people of the capital, and I hadn't thought about it like that. I think it's a really good way of looking at it. Do you think then that in order to progress past the warrior archetype, you need to have, quote unquote, seen some shit in your life and know the cost of war and know battle, in order for you to move past, and to move in these next stages where you have respect for the enemy and where you love people and the world more widely?
I don't think you need to have physically done that, but I think you experience it in your inner war, I think, so that everybody can, like a single mom trying to raise a couple of kids. She might not have been in a war, but she's in a war, and she's getting 2 or 3 jobs and all that sort of stuff. And the relationships that she has, let's say she's a waitress in one job, with her fellow waitresses and with the boss and with the customers, are kind of like those experiences you had with your fellow squaddies over there, So they form bonds, people help each other out in incredible, tense, tough situations. So, no, I think life itself is hard enough but there's one other point that I make in this series that I'll throw out here for whatever this is worth. I think that, like in the sense of moving beyond the warrior archetype, if you ask yourself, if we move from this archetype to the next archetype, what happens to the ones we leave behind? Do they just go away? Do they vanish? And I think the answer is they absolutely don't. That what happens is we sort of build upon them, so that the lessons that you learn as a soldier, or that somebody learns in their inner war, like for instance, the virtues of a warrior are something like courage, loyalty to brothers in arms, patience, the willing, enduring embrace of adversity, that kind of thing. Love for the enemy. Don't go away. And in fact, when one moves on to the next archetype, let's say you move on, you come home from Afghanistan, you start a family. Now you're in an archetype, the mentor, the father, the teacher, where you're helping others to kind of come up, in your way, teaching them or something, or being a role model for them. All those virtues that you learned as a warrior stay with you, and you build upon them, and you expand upon them. So I really do think that's how we evolve and how we mature.
I think so. It's really helped me. That series has really helped me kind of wrap my head around it, because I never really thought about it before, to be quite honest. And now I've seen it, I'm like, oh, Oh yeah, okay. It just clicks. A lot of it makes sense. And you've got really strong cast of characters around Telemon in the book. Are they themselves representative of archetypes?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I'm a believer that characters in fiction, you want them to be nuanced and you want them to have contradictions, but they're strongest if they're archetypes, I think. Those are the ones that stick with you. If you think about any great movies that you love, Lawrence of Arabia, The Godfather, Casablanca, those characters are archetypes. So, and they become, I'm sure it's the same with you, Des, when you're writing characters that you're drawn to those things. You want something strong. The other thing, this is a writer thing between you and me and our other audience. One of the great things I think that energizes a scene in a piece of fiction or a movie is when you can have a clash of archetypes. Or, like, for instance, if you think about Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, that's the warrior archetype and the sage archetype. And it makes for a really interesting thing, isn't it? Or clashes within archetypes. If you have two warriors, like a good warrior and a bad warrior, one that's gone over to the dark side and one that's on the right side, it makes for an interesting scene, for conflict and for good stuff to come out. Game of Thrones is just full of that. If you watch the scenes, almost every scene is a clash of archetypes.
Yeah, you mentioned a few names earlier: Obi-Wan, Gandalf, people that anybody I think could relate to. I've got to cherry pick a question out of here. I'm going to go for this one, Steve, because this is one of the things I've been coming across recently in my own writing, in my reading, is this kind of it's hard to put it. It's this the glory of war, right? Because you'll hear people say, "Oh, there's no glory in war. It's just terrible," and everything. And I'm thinking, I don't think I agree with that. I think there is some kind of glory in war. I'd be interested to just know what your opinions in it is, because you write about warriors, you study warriors from all the way from the ancient Greeks up to now. Do you think, is there glory in war?
I don't know if the word glory is the right word, but I recently I've been in touch with a bunch of veterans way beyond your veteran thing, in the sense of these guys are 65, 70 years old. They're veterans of Vietnam and things like that. And you can see that their experiences in war are, like, in many ways, the central experiences of their life. And bonds that they have with their brothers, they will never let go of those, and that it's a central experience. I think it's almost the suffering is almost more, or the shared suffering is almost more what it's about, rather than any quote unquote victory or anything like that. But they're definitely proud of what they did, and it sort of, they look back on that, and it's something that nobody can take away from them, and that they're drawing strength from even today. And the bonds between them are stronger today, I think, or at least as strong as they were back in the day. And even like guys that didn't serve literally together, right? They weren't in the trenches together. Somebody was over here, and they all know that the shared experience was the same. Maybe they were in the air arm and one was in the infantry, but they all kind of know they were terrified the same way. And it is like I see it over and over again. It's like the central experience of their life, even more so, I think, than having children, even more than their love for their children.
Yeah, I mean, I would not disagree with any of that. One of the things I think about is, when I used to see all the tanks and the armored vehicles together in column, it makes your heart sore. It really does. And I think the same when I picture a phalanx, and I just think of these ranks of men and shield and spears. I mean, what comes next is just butchery. But those moments, I mean, God, it's just...
Yeah, that's true. Of course, you don't get those moments in the ditch somewhere. Yeah. But did you ever read Winston Churchill's book, The River War?
I haven't, no.
Oh, this is about the Battle of Omdurman. Does that ring a bell?
I've heard about what kind of Churchill's... Was that the one that he fought in as a young soldier? Was it? Yeah,
you should read this. It's really interesting, because it's amazing to think that Churchill, that's a force in our lives, when he was a young man, it was far enough back. He participated in like the last of those great battles where the enemy was on horseback with banners and swords, you know. Of course, they were going into British cannon, and the British just mowed them down. But just like you say, what a spectacle that must have been, you know. Scimitars and, you know, banners and all kinds of stuff, you know, horses. Those days are over.
If you could be a witness to anything, if you could be witness to any moment in history like that, which one would it be?
Boy, I don't know. It's a good question. I suppose it would be whatever the most spectacular one of those things were, you know. I don't know. I would ask you. You probably know more of those than I do.
I don't know, Steve, to be honest, because there's something about the Greeks, and I think maybe one of Alexander's battles.
I'd love to see something with Alexander, just to see him on Bucephalus and see what that was really like, you know?
I can't believe his horse made it through so much.
Yeah. Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. What was that horse made out of? That was absolutely...
30 years, yeah.
Absolutely mental. Like, they died a natural death, didn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that is insane. Like, when you think everything that they went through, that horse... And that horse made it to the end of the natural death. Steve, I apologise. We've gone over time, mate. I'm sorry about that.
Hey, no problem. Glad to do it any time with you.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and I'll let everybody know where they can get the book. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on to the audience? Anything about where they can find you, what you're up to, or any of that kind of stuff?
The only thing I would say, the new book is called A Man at Arms, and as part of our trying to promote it, we've got some cool little gifts and bonuses and stuff. So if you buy the book, hang on to your receipt.
Okay.
And sort of watch me on Instagram. It's Stephen_Pressfield. And we've got some pretty cool stuff that you would love some of the stuff we have.
Awesome. And I thoroughly recommend the Warrior Archetype series to everybody. I think it's I think anybody should watch it anyway, but certainly anybody that's serving in the military, anybody that aspires to be in the military, any veterans, 100% need to watch all that series. I mean, you're putting up so much great content out there for people, so thank you for that, Steve, and thank you so much for today, mate. It's a pleasure as always. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, it's great hanging out with you anytime. Call me anytime and we'll do this whatever you want to do.
Guys, thank you so much for listening today. Steve, thanks for coming on the podcast, mate. Guys, if you enjoyed today's podcast and you want to say thank you to Steve, then you can do so by following him on social media. Like I said before, I highly recommend the Warrior Archetype series. You'll have seen me posting it on Veteran State of Mind and on my own personal social media. Highly recommend that anyone in the military or within any kind of even if you're just interested in the military, you need to be watching this series from Stephen Pressfield. It is absolutely gold and it's free. So, head over and check that out. There's a link to Steve's new book, A Man at Arms. That's down in the show notes if you want to pre-order that. I would consider that a personal favour if you want to go ahead and do that, because I want to support that book as I want to support the books of all the guests that we have on the podcast. Whenever we have a guest on, guys, if you've enjoyed the podcast, they've given an hour or two of their time, I think it's the very least that we can do to give them a follow on social media, buy their book if we're able to. I know times are tough, and I don't want anyone going in debt buying people's books. I know how tempting it is to go into debt buying books. I could quite happily build a castle out of the things. But there we go. I digress. Want to say a big thank you as well to Zulu Alpha Straps for sponsoring today's podcast. Thank you guys. You've been supporting us for a long time. We really appreciate it. And same too to the Royal British Legion. Couldn't do this without you. Just feeling very grateful, guys. Basically, grateful to you listening. Grateful for Steve coming on. Grateful for our sponsors. It's going to be another great year. It's already started off in a great way. We've had great guests. We've got more great guests coming on, and we have great listeners. And I'm very thankful to all of you guys for tuning in, week out. I'll catch you next time, and I love you. Bye.
You told me not to worry, and you wouldn't break my heart. You told me you were sorry, yeah, my whole world fell apart. You said it's not my fault, and yeah, I've never done you wrong. I'm grinding to a halt, now I can see you're moving on. I promised I'd get better, and I told you things would change. You keep me to the gutter, yeah, I'll never be the same. I've got to let you go, now live your life and spread your wings, and yeah, you put on quite write a show and pull the puppet strings. And are you sure that you don't want me? Remember all the pain, or maybe you should thank me. It's your loss and my gain. I'm leaving now forever, I won't hang my head in shame. But yeah, you've taken me for granted, and you should feel ashamed. You sold a dream to all of us, a dream that we'd all die for, a reason for us all to live and something we could fight for. I might just help a man up to his feet or hold a newborn, but no matter what I do, my hands remembering my rifle, yeah.
Life's hard, I know that, still wouldn't change shit. I wouldn't go back, yeah, I wouldn't go back. Feelings I hold back, memories fade, yeah, they go fast, yeah, they go fast. Good times they come and go, survive the highs and lows, just take it step by step, I guess, yeah, I suppose. Good times they come and go, survive the highs and lows, just take it step by step, I guess.